My name is Echo, and I'm an alter in a plural system. If you don't know what that means, it's basically there used to be a disorder called multiple personality disorder. Now it's called dissociative identity disorder, or DID. And what that basically means is that you've been traumatized as a child, and in order to avoid the trauma or make it a little bit better, you did something with your brain where you split into two people. So you were able to view the trauma happening to you as actually happening to somebody else. That's a vast oversimplification. People of DID always have it because of trauma, and they tend to black out when like one personality comes forward and the other personality comes forward again, and they don't remember anything that happened. Like if you've seen The Three Faces of Eve, that's what she has. Okay, so what I believe I have is OSDD, which is the same as DID, but you don't get the blackouts. You are co-conscious. So, like, I am an alter. I'm one of the personalities in the system, but both of the other personalities, or alters, or headmates, whatever you want to call them, are aware of what I'm doing right now, and have somewhat of an input. I'm fronting, which means that I'm the person who you see, but the other ones are in my head. Okay, another thing I wanted to talk about is that our system considers itself coigenic. So we've got three categories: endogenic, traumagenic, and coigenic. Traumagenic is what I talked about before. Basically, I think it's the most common. And then endogenic is like people who have manifested different personalities on their own, either intentionally or they just showed up. Coigenic is somewhat in between. It basically means that you don't know why you have multiple personalities. It might be because of trauma, or it might be because it might just be a natural development in who you are. It might be a little bit of both. You don't know. So that's where I'm at. When I refer to things that happened to us before we became plural, which was like a year ago, I'm just gonna say me sometimes, or us. I'm not sure. I'll figure it out. But yeah, that's like our singlet version. We were like mushed together, and then we separated. So if we had to have an explanation for why we manifested plurality, it was a combination of a bunch of different things. There are traumatic events which I don't want to talk about. But I think that relative to a lot of people who have DID, the things I went through weren't that bad. They were along the lines of like bullying and a hard time with my family, psychologically abusive partners, things like that. So I did experience trauma, but I'm not sure that the plurality was a direct result of the trauma. The plurality seemed more to come from the fact that I didn't really know who I wanted to be growing up. I had all these options. I was non-binary. I didn't really know what gender I was. I changed how I acted, how I dressed, how I looked, how I interacted with people, what my interests were, a lot. And I think that I always felt really oppressed by the fact that I had to be one thing, but it never occurred to me that I could be both until I learned about plurality, and it really fascinated me. Like, even before I learned about plurality, I was always really obsessed with movies where one actor changes a ton throughout the movie. Like, there's the movie White Oleander, and Alison Lohman's character, like, she goes through a bunch of different stages in her life where she like looks completely different and acts completely different, and has different interests, and she basically goes through a bunch of different personalities without actually talking about it. I also really like the show Orphan Black, which is about clones, so the same actress plays all these different characters, and I thought that was really cool. But back then I didn't know that I could be plural, and then I learned about it. I still didn't know that I could be plural, but then I kind of remembered having dissociated in the past, and I tried more and more to dissociate to see if I could be plural, and one day it just clicked. One day I, Echo, surfaced, and I was just like, hey, I am not Sam. And people were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm a different person. And I chose a name, and I figured out the things I liked and what I wanted to wear, and, you know, technically I'm only a year old, so, I mean, or I've only been, like, conscious for a year. Super weird thing is that I already had all these clothes and like books and things that Sam wasn't super enthusiastic about, but they kept anyway because it's almost as if like subconsciously she knew that one day I would come out and then she would be like prepared. Sorry, I always misgender Sam, which is terrible. Sam identifies as they, I identify as she. But since we've been identifying as she our whole lives, because like being non-binary is new to us too, sometimes we misgender each other and ourselves. Life is complicated, gender is complicated. So the way the plurality generally works is that instead of thinking of ourselves as an individual, we think of ourselves as a system. And the system is in our head, and whoever's fronting is the person presenting and the one that you can interact with. And then we can switch. Not everybody who is plural really has perfect control over when they switch, but Sam and I communicate with each other pretty well. So I wouldn't say that we have perfect control because there's the whole question of, does free will really exist? But that's a whole weird philosophy thing. We're not going to get into that in this video. Our name is the Hive System. I know that name has been taken before. It's pretty popular because of the whole hive mind thing, but somebody else gave us that name and it caught on, so that's our name too. So I believe I emerged as a protector. There are all sorts of different categories of alters that you can be. I believe that I emerged in order to protect Sam from forces that they found threatening or too hard, like working or confronting people, dealing with family, that sort of thing. But that was before I became self-aware. So now I feel like my role is a little bit more complex than just being a protector. And also now that we have control over when I come out and when I don't, I actually can't come out to protect Sam every time I want to, because sometimes I know that I would actually make the situation worse. I use female pronouns. As you can see, I'm not particularly like girly or anything, but I think that my mannerisms are like a little bit more girly than Sam. I don't know. Like I said, gender's weird, whatever. I also perform the role of gatekeeper, which means that I decide whether any other alters get to emerge and when, and things like that. Basically, Sam, even though I'm an alter and Sam is the host, Sam and I are still sort of like the two heads of the system. There is one other alter, but so far, Sam and I have decided to keep them at bay. So yeah, my mannerisms and the way I talk, the way I dress, all that kind of stuff is different than Sam. So people can usually tell when I'm out and when Sam's out, but we do tell people too because, we do look exactly the same. So if you're not used to it, we totally understand that you won't know. And we have little like codes, so we're not just sort of like announcing ourselves like we're the fucking center of attention. So my code is I just go I don't do the mouth sound. I just wave like that or like tap on something to signify that it's me. I wear makeup. Sam doesn't. I'm not a huge makeup fan, but I do. The reason I wear makeup is because I try to make my face look a certain way. I have a mental image of how I look in my head that's completely different from the face of the body. So when I do my makeup, I try to make my eyes look bigger and my lips look smaller. I also do a picture of what I think I look like in my head. I mean, I know that I don't actually look like that when I come out, but my version of myself looks a certain way for some reason. So I'll show you a picture of that. So I perform just sort of the necessary tasks in life that Sam doesn't have the energy for, or just doesn't want to do, and I find kind of satisfying, like going to work, cooking, cleaning, and when I have some free time, I like going on Reddit, reading forums, doing psychology research. I have a bachelor's degree in psychology. I really like psychology, which is one of the reasons why I want to make this channel. I want to create some connections between other plurals, because I really like, sort of getting into people's heads and figuring out how other people think. Okay, so now let's talk about Sam. Hopefully I'll get Sam to appear in this channel, although I don't think they want to be a really big part of it. It's mostly going to be me. So Sam is the host, which means they get the final say in everything we do. For example, if our life was up to me, maybe I would try to go to grad school, but I think that Sam wants to try being like a self-employed artist and see if that works. So that's what we're doing because Sam's the host. And I accept that. Sam and I both do art. but it's different. Mine is realistic, and it's basically all about technical skill, and I just try to. It's kind of like, you know, I gamify it. Um, and then Sam's art is more cartoony. Sam likes doing ugly portraits and like weird melty anime things and kind of like punk art. I think the genre is called lowbrow. So I talked about Sam, I talked about me, and I'm not really going to talk about Leslie because they haven't appeared very much. We don't know much about them, and so I don't want to make any definitive statements about someone I don't really know about. But the good thing is that, you know, I can keep Leslie at bay, and we may investigate what's going on with her later. The reason I'm making this channel is for a number of reasons. One, I want to share and compare experiences with other plurals. I also think that YouTube is a really good way of kind of getting to know somebody. Like, I know a lot of people like having these Skype and like Google Hangout conversations and stuff, but I've just always been super bothered by the amount of lag, and I feel like you get way more of an opportunity to actually get to know somebody, like, if you just watch a bunch of their videos on YouTube. Like, there are a bunch of YouTubers who I feel really close to because I've just watched them talk about whatever for a really long amount of time. And I kind of like that dynamic. I think it's cool, so I want to do it too. I actually watched a whole documentary on parasocial relationships, which is basically what that means is like any relationship that isn't really real. It's through the internet or in your head or whatever. Um, and the documentary was kind of saying that like parasocial relationships were bad. But I mean, I have pretty much grown up on parasocial relationships. Like, I have been a huge fan of a lot of different singers and artists, and the feeling that I knew them and that they were there for me even when the people in my real life weren't really helped me get by. So I don't necessarily think that parasocial relationships are always bad as long as you know where to draw the line. The other reason I'm making this channel is for my friends in real life, because I want you guys to be able to understand my situation and have it laid out in sort of a really simple way that's easy to grasp, with maybe pictures and things like that. And the last reason I'm making this channel is just kind of as a form of therapy for myself, because talking things out, it helps me think, and I have found that I really like making videos. I also want to destigmatize neurodivergence in general, because I think not just plurals, but everybody who has a so-called mental illness, I mean, maybe that thing is actually impairing your functionality, in which case definitely go ahead and get treated. But I do think that our society is not very accepting of different sorts of ways of thinking, and I think the more that neurodivergent individuals put themselves out there and talk about what's going on in their head, will probably be a lot more relatable to everybody. A big problem that a lot of plurals run into, and that I run into a lot, is that people think we're fake. But the ironic thing I've noticed is that it's always whoever they meet first that they think is the real one, and then whoever they meet second that they think is, like, pretend. I know it can be hard to get used to. I'm going to be perfectly honest, before I experimented with plurality myself, I didn't think it was real. I thought people were faking it because that's what I was told in my psychology education. But I mean, if you really think about it, it would be so much work to fake it. It wouldn't be worth it. And I mean, it would also just, you would go insane, and then it might come true. Congratulations. You know, and it's a natural response to be kind of freaked out by anything that's super unfamiliar. So you definitely don't need to feel bad if you think it's weird, because it is weird. I think more and more people are being comfortable with expressing themselves in different ways and experimenting with their identities, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Bye! Thanks for watching. Like and share, blah blah blah.